we were discussing questions, and we completed questions covering different areas. And I think this is the last one. We discussed RTGS, who provide the payment, describe the check imaging, briefly explain the role of Lanka Clear. Okay, so these were the questions we discussed last week, and we will look into some other questions. Before that, we will talk about, and I'll share a video clip once again. This is about 2008 financial crisis. We talked about corporate governance. If corporates are not properly governed, if there are frauds within, then one after the other, the entire system will collapse. How do you prevent that? So you have regulators. Last week, we talked about regulators of different industries who regulate this, who regulate that. Okay. Now, we'll first go to this video clip. After that, we'll look into our question session.
Something a little different. We're going to explore one moment in history in depth. We're going to talk about how the 2008 financial crisis happened and the government response to it in the United States.
So let's get started. The 2008 financial crisis was a big deal. Ben Bernanke said it could have resulted in a 1930-style global financial and economic meltdown with catastrophic implications. But what happened? Why did it happen? And why aren't we all huddled around burning trash cans, forming a raiding party to go steal gas from other tribes in the wasteland? By the way, if you're actually doing that, you probably didn't hear we survived the financial crisis. Things got better. Seriously, put down your crossbows.
To explain what happened, first we have to do a quick explainer about mortgages. And you might already know this, but basically someone that wants to buy a house will often borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars from a bank. In return, the bank gets a piece of paper called a mortgage. Every month, the homeowner has to pay back a portion of the principal plus interest to whomever holds the piece of paper. If they stop paying, that's called a default, and whomever holds that piece of paper gets the house. The reason I'm saying whomever holds the paper rather than the bank is because the bank, the original lender, often sells that mortgage to some third party. And the reason I say often is because this happens all the time. I've had my...
Now, this is what we said, securitization. You get a loan and you get either the equipment or the land, say the vehicle or the land, the usage. You will become the user, but against a piece of paper. Now that is called mortgage. That piece of paper is with the bank. The bank in return can transfer this piece of paper to someone else and get money as another loan. So that's securitization. Okay, we'll continue.
House for 9 months and 3 different banks have had the mortgage. Traditionally, it was pretty hard to get a mortgage if you had bad credit or didn't have a steady job. Lenders just didn't want to take the risk that you might default on your loan. But
we talked about credit evaluation at the very beginning. We are not giving loans to someone who cannot prove his earning, his way, or his ability to pay back. In addition, we look at collaterals. If his current income source stops, still we must have a security, and we call that collateral.
All that started to change in the 2000s. And before we go further, a quick aside here. The story gets complicated fast, and it's a fascinating story, but we're trying to keep it relatively simple. So I've asked Stan if we could put some additional resources in the YouTube description. And Stan said yes. Thanks, Stan. Anyway, back to our story. In the 2000s, investors in the US and abroad looking for a low-risk, high-return investment.
Okay, so the dictum is higher the risk, higher the return, but man is very creative. So he always wants to see opportunities where the risk is very low and the return is very high.
started throwing their money at the US housing market. The thinking was they could get a better return from the interest rates homeowners paid on mortgages than they could by investing in things like US Treasury bonds, which were paying very low interest. But big money global investors didn't want to just buy up my mortgage and Stan's mortgage. It's too much hassle to deal with us as individuals. I mean, we're paying. Instead, they bought investments called mortgage-backed securities. Mortgage-backed securities are created when large financial institutions securitize mortgages. Basically, they buy up thousands of individual mortgages, bundle them together, and sell shares of that pool to investors. Investors gobbled these mortgage-backed securities up. Again, they paid a higher rate of return than investors could get in other places, and they looked like really safe bets. For one, home prices were going up and up. So lenders thought, worst case scenario, the borrower defaults on the mortgage, we can just sell the house for more money. At the same time, credit ratings agencies were telling investors these mortgage-backed securities were safe investments. They gave a lot of these mortgage-backed securities AAA ratings, the best of the best. And back when mortgages were only for borrowers with good credit, mortgage debt was a good investment. Anyway, investors were desperate to buy more and more of these securities. So lenders did their best to help create more of them. But to create more of them, they needed more mortgages. So lenders loosened their standards and made loans to people with low income and poor credit. You'll hear these called subprime mortgages.
Okay, so we talk about prime lenders. Prime means best. When we are giving loans, we look at prime lenders. Prime loan rate means what? If you are a good customer. What do you mean by good customer? If you have good payback history, if your clip is clear, and if your ability to pay back is good, collaterals plus payback history. If so, you are a prime customer. When you don't have that, we call that subprime, second to best.
Eventually, some institutions even started using what are called predatory lending practices to generate mortgages. They made loans without verifying income and offered absurd adjustable rate mortgages with payments people could afford at first, but quickly ballooned beyond their means. But these new subprime lending practices were brand new. That meant credit rating agencies could still point to historical data that indicated mortgage debt was a safe bet. But it wasn't. These investments were becoming less and less safe all the time. But investors trusted the ratings and kept pouring in their money. Traders also started selling an even riskier product called collateralized debt obligations, or CDOs. And again, some of these investments were given the highest credit ratings from the ratings agencies, even though many of them were made up of these incredibly risky loans. While the investors and traders and bankers were throwing money into the U.S. housing market, the price of homes in the U.S. was going up and up and up. The new lax lending requirements and low interest rates drove housing prices higher, which only made the mortgage-backed securities and CDOs seem like an even better investment. If the borrowers defaulted, the bank would still have this super valuable house, right? No, wrong. Let's go to the thought bubble. Actually, let's go to the housing bubble. You remember bubbles, right? Rapid price increases driven by irrational decisions. Well, this was a bubble, and bubbles have an annoying tendency to burst. And this one did. People just couldn't pay for their incredibly expensive houses or keep up with their ballooning mortgage payments. Borrowers started defaulting, which put more houses back on the market for sale. But there weren't buyers, so supply was up, demand was down, and home prices started collapsing. As prices fell, some borrowers suddenly had a mortgage for way more than their home was currently worth. Some stopped paying. That led to more defaults, pushing housing prices down further. As this was happening, the big financial institutions stopped buying subprime mortgages, and subprime lenders were getting stuck with bad loans. By 2007, some really big lenders had declared bankruptcy. The problem spread to the big investors who'd poured money into these mortgage-backed securities and CDOs, and they started losing money on their investments. A bunch of money. But wait, there's more. There was another financial instrument that financial institutions had on their books that exacerbated all of these problems. Unregulated over-the-counter derivatives, including something called credit default swaps, that were basically sold as insurance against the default of mortgage-backed securities. Does AIG ring a bell? It sold tens of billions of dollars worth of these insurance policies without money to back them up when things went wrong. And as we mentioned, things went terribly wrong. These credit default swaps were also turned into other securities that essentially allowed traders to bet huge amounts of money on whether the values of mortgage securities would go up or down. All these bets, these financial instruments, resulted in an incredibly complicated web of assets, liabilities, and risks, so that when things started going bad, they went bad for the entire financial system. Thanks, Thought Bubble. Some major financial players declared bankruptcy, like Lehman Brothers. Others were forced into mergers or needed to be bailed out by the government. No one knew exactly how bad the balance sheets at some of.
Okay, so one solution was merging. When you see there are small institutions which are going to collapse and big ones who can sustain, you merge the small one with big one.
These financial institutions really were. These complicated, unregulated assets made it hard to tell. Panic set in. Trading and the credit markets froze. The stock market crashed. And the U.S. economy suddenly found itself in a disastrous recession.
So what did the government do? Well, it did a lot. The Federal Reserve stepped in and offered to make emergency loans to banks. The idea was to prevent fundamentally sound banks from collapsing just because their lenders were panicking. The government enacted a program called TARP, the Troubled Assets Relief Program, which the rest of us call the bank bailout. This initially earmarked $700 billion to shore up the banks. It actually ended up spending $250 billion bailing out the banks, and was later expanded to help automakers, AIG, and homeowners. In combination with lending by the Fed, this helped stop the cascade of panic in the financial system. Treasury also conducted stress tests on the largest Wall Street banks. Government accountants swarmed over bank balance sheets and publicly announced which ones were sound and which ones needed to raise more money. This eliminated some of the uncertainty that had paralyzed lending among institutions. Congress also passed a huge stimulus package in January 2009. This pumped over $800 billion into the economy through new spending and tax cuts. This helped slow the free fall of spending, output, and employment.
In 2010, Congress passed a financial reform called the Dodd-Frank Law. It took steps to increase transparency and to prevent banks from taking on so much risk. Dodd-Frank did a lot of things. It set up a consumer protection bureau to reduce predatory lending. It required that financial derivatives be traded in exchanges that all market participants can observe. And it put mechanisms in place for large banks to fail in a controlled, predictable manner. But there's no consensus on whether this regulation is enough to prevent future crises.
So what have we learned from all this? Well, one key factor that led to the 2008 financial crisis was perverse incentives. A perverse incentive is when a policy ends up having a negative effect opposite of what was intended. Like mortgage brokers got bonuses for lending out more money, but that encouraged them to make risky loans, which hurt profits in the end. That leads us to moral hazard. This is when one person takes on more risk because someone else bears the burden of that risk. Banks and lenders were willing to lend to subprime borrowers because they planned to sell the mortgages to somebody else. Everyone thought they could pass the risk up the line. The phrase too big to fail is a perfect example of moral hazard. If banks know that they're going to be bailed out by the government, they have an incentive to make risky or perhaps unwise bets. Former Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan summed it up really nicely when he said, if they're too big to fail, they're too big.
When something terrible happens, people naturally look for someone to blame. In the case of the 2008 financial crisis, no one had to look very far because the blame and the pain was spread throughout the U.S. economy. The government failed to regulate and supervise the financial system. To quote the Bipartisan Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission report, the sentries were not at their post, in no small part due to the widely accepted faith in the self-correcting nature of the markets and the ability of financial institutions to effectively police themselves. The report placed some of the blame on the years of deregulation in the financial industry and blamed regulators themselves for not doing more. The financial industry failed. Everyone in the system was borrowing too much money and taking too much risk, from the big financial institutions to individual borrowers. The institutions were taking on huge debt loads to invest in risky assets, and a huge number of homeowners were taking on mortgages they couldn't afford. But the thing to remember about this massive systemic failure is that it happened in a system made up of humans, with human failings. Some didn't understand what was happening. Some willfully ignored the problems, and some were simply unethical, motivated by the massive amounts of money involved. I think we should give the last word today to the Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission report. To paraphrase Shakespeare, they wrote, "The fault lies not in the stars, but in us." Thanks for watching. Crash Course Economics is made with the help of
Okay. Okay. Once again, can you hear me? If so, say yes in the chat box. Okay, thanks. Right, so we watched YouTube, and it was on 2008 financial crisis. There were some very good words. Regulations, deregulations. Means what? Industries have to be regulated. If you are a very careful listener, you should have heard something called Dodd-Frank Act. In US, the Senate members, from time to time, when they see issues, they discuss and propose policy paper to the Senate, and when that gets passed, it often gets known as the user's name, the presenter's name, Dodd-Frank Act. The two persons who presented that, Seagull Act. Okay, so it was after looking so many failures, they come up with a proposal and say we have to regulate this industry. There is often a conflict between regulating and deregulating. Deregulating means the private sector believes government should not involve. We must look after our activities ourselves. How much profit we are making, that's our job. Government has nothing to do with that. So there is always an argument for deregulation. On the other hand, there is interest from the general public to regulate all institutions. Banks, finance companies, insurance, stockbrokers, all of us are regulated. But think about other industries, maybe hotel sector, maybe paddy, rice, sugar, our commodities. We don't have that much of regulations, and you can see there is a conflict of interest between regulating and deregulating. Then we looked at financial crisis. We heard the term bubble, bubbles get burst. Moral hazard means what? When someone thinks, I'm covered, my risk is fully covered, they behave recklessly. When banks believe there is no risk in giving away a loan, why? I can transfer that to another party. That another party believes there is no risk in these assets, which I collateralized because the bank has already gone through the credit evaluation process. Then there is rating agencies. General public believe in rating agencies. They also believe we need not to do much investigation, examination, and we can give AAA without much problem. Finally, what happened? Everyone was transferring their responsibility to someone else. Moral hazard was taking place. Everyone is profit-oriented. And finally, the system got collapsed. To prevent that, you have regulations. Okay, now we'll look into today's questions. This is September 2014, number 5, old one. Name the primary major regulator of the following financial institutions and brief the nature of such regulations. Okay. Okay. Name them. First of all, have we done this question earlier? Have we done this last week, September 2014? Okay, anyway, take just 10 minutes. You can say who the regulator, exchanges, who the regulator, cooperative societies, who is the regulator, primary dealers, who is the regulator, insurance brokers, who is the regulator. Then the nature of such regulations. Okay, we'll take the first one. Exchanges. Who is the regulator? Exchanges. Who is the regulator? SEC. Very good. Then the nature of regulating. What is that? The nature of regulating. Regulator is SEC. Then regulating the capital market. Okay. Licensing and listing. Licensing and listing. Right. Then we'll take the other one. Number 2. What is number 2? Cooperative societies. Who is the regulator? Cooperative societies. Who is the regulator? Department of Cooperative Development, or else you can say Commission of Cooperative Development. Right. Then the nature of regulating and auditing. Okay. Right. Then the third one, primary dealer. Who is the regulator? CBSL. Nature of regulation. I have always talked about a bracket. Yeah, very good. Licensing. Yeah. Providing directions, supervision, on-site and off-site examinations. Okay. Then the last one, insurance brokers. Insurance brokers. Who is the regulator? Yeah. Insurance Regulatory Commission of Sri Lanka. Very good. IRCSL. Then the nature, once again, licensing, regulating, supervision, examination. Right. Good. Next one. What is that? Describe the nature of following services. Payment cards. Describe the nature of following services provided by these service providers and the importance to the public and the company. To the public and the economy. 2014-8. And the economy, not the company, and the economy. Okay, describe the nature of following service providers by the service, okay, by these service providers and their importance to the public and the economy. Payment cards, fund transfers, mobile cash, payment and settlements. Okay, answer that. I'll give you 5 minutes, then we'll discuss. Okay, we'll take the first one. Describe the nature of following services and their importance to public and the economy. Payment cards. What is the nature? Means just describe what is payment card. What do you understand by payment card? Then the importance to the general public and the economy. Payment cards. What are they? Payment cards, what are they? And the importance to the general public and the economy. A plastic card used to do payments. Very good. Then tell me some examples. Say what type, credit, debit, likewise. Okay, so tell that also. A plastic card used to do payments, and these cards can be credit cards and debit cards. Okay. Then what is the usage to the general public and economy? Okay. Even last week we talked about users. You can always say, once again, a standard. Yeah. Minimize use of physical cash. Right. What else? Okay. Hassle of using cash. Fast and convenient. Fast and convenient. Okay. Second one, fund transfers. What is the nature and the importance? Fund transfers, what is that? Fund transfers, once again, what is that? Fund transfers mean transferring money from one location to another, and you can use what? SLIPs, RTGS, SWIFT for that. Okay, so the nature, payments through banks via systems such as SWIFT, RTGS, and SLIPs, specifically designed for payments among deposits electronically. Okay, so what is the importance of fund transfers? Once again, you have the same answer. What is the importance of fund transferring to the general public and the economy? Yeah. Importance, what is that? RTGS, SLIPs, you have certain important, yeah, they are very important. Why? Yeah, do payments. Yeah, what is that? Once again, eliminate the use of hassle of cash. Fast and convenient. Okay, small to large payments. Okay, the last one. Yeah, it's safe. Very good. Then the last one, payments and settlement systems. The nature and the importance.
So third one is mobile cash, right?
Yeah, sorry. Third one is mobile cash. Mobile cash, what is the usage? Okay, so the last one was on this one. That's settlement. Yeah, mobile cash. The importance, I mean, the first is nature, then the importance. Mobile cash. Payment through mobile phones with the connection to bank and mobile phone companies based on deposits or topped up money. So that is the nature. And the importance the same. Eliminate the usage of hassle of cash, very fast, convenient, receipt at low cost. Okay. Now we'll move to the other one. March 2017, number 4. Right. Once again, I'll give you about 15 minutes. Read it, write your answers, then we'll discuss. Market intermediaries. The question is not asking financial intermediaries. Okay. Who are market intermediaries? Okay, so I'll give you 15 minutes, then we'll discuss. Okay, so we are asking about market intermediaries, not financial intermediaries. March 2017, number 4. Okay, market intermediaries, who are they? So the first one, name 4 types of registered market intermediaries and describe how they facilitate operations of the capital market. So you can see by the question itself, capital market. So these are intermediaries in capital market. Okay. Now, who are the intermediaries in capital market? Second one, name the regulatory authority for registered market intermediaries. Okay, now who is looking after regulating capital market related institutions? Describe briefly how technology has contributed towards improving efficiency in capital market operations. Okay, so the entire question is on capital market. What is the role of an underwriter? Now we are referring to capital market. If so, underwriter means share underwriting. Okay, write your answers, then we'll discuss. Yeah. What are the financial intermediaries coming under? Yeah, margin traders, clearing houses, stockbroker firms, stock dealers. Very good. Right. So the answer reads investment managers. A person who for a fee or commission engages in the business of managing a portfolio of listed securities on behalf of an investor or advise any person on the merits of investing, purchasing or selling listed securities, but shall not include the licensed managing company of a unit trust. Number 2, margin providers. Okay. A person who is in the business of providing credit to investors to purchase securities of a listed public company. Okay. So who is margin provider? A person who collateralize share portfolios and provide loans against that to buy further shares. Underwriters. Okay. So in your answer, you have missed that. Share underwriters. Any person who in connection with a public issue of securities of a listed public company or a company which has applied for listing guarantees to purchase unsubscribed securities of such company for a fee or commission, or who negotiates with such company to purchase such securities in the event of offer being not fully subscribed, and includes any person who purchased such issues from the company specifically with the view to offering such securities to the public. Okay. Now, underwriter. Okay. Now, let's say when people's leasing went to IPO for the very first time. Okay, so when you are getting listed in the Colombo Stock Exchange for the very first time, you come up with initial public offering. So People's Leasing and Finance PLC came with the IPO of 8 billion. Now, that time it was the second biggest IPO in Sri Lanka. The first was Dialog, 8 billion. So 8 billion is an amount where the general public should subscribe. Then we take the assistance of an underwriter. The underwriter undertake to purchase any amount of shares which the general public fails to subscribe. Okay, so that's underwriting. Okay, underwriting, any person who in connection with the public issue of securities guaranteeing to purchase unsubscribed securities of the company at a fee or a commission. Okay. Then you have credit rating agencies. Okay. So in your answer, these are missing. Credit rating agencies. Who are they? A person engaged in the business of assessing and evaluating the credit worthiness of such issues of listed securities or securities to be listed, with particular regard to issuers' ability to perform any obligations imposed on the issuers thereon. Okay. Now, who are the rating agencies in Sri Lanka? Rating agencies. Moody's, okay. Others? Fitch, S&P, okay. Clearing houses. Who performs the function of, clearing house is in your answer. Who performs the function of a clearing house, which shall be responsible for handling all securities deposited with it, and which permits or facilitates the settlement of securities transactions of a licensed exchange. Okay. Right. Now, the second question. Name the regulatory authority of registered market intermediaries. You talked about market intermediaries. Now you know them. Who are they? Margin providers, investment managers, credit rating agencies, clearing houses, stock brokers. Okay. Right. Who are regulating them? And briefly describe their role. Okay. Take your time and tell me who is the regulator and what is the nature of regulating. Who is the regulator of market intermediaries? SEC. Very good. Then the regulator's role. Okay, so I have given you something to cover up everything. Right, so the answer reads, registration of market intermediaries. Issue terms and conditions to be complied with. Issue certificate of registration. Renewal of registration. Carries out surveillance of operation of market intermediaries. Carries out investigations into complaints against market intermediaries. Carries out enforcement action in the case of market malpractices. Next one. Describe briefly how technology has contributed towards improving efficiency in capital market operations. Okay. So something you can think and write, how technology has helped to improve. Okay. Now those days we all got printed materials. If I buy shares, I have something called share certificate. At the IPO, I'm given a physical thing called share certificate. And today, you don't have anything called share certificate. We have moved into e-world. No physical documents. Right. And those days, when companies declare dividends, the check is physically posted, register posted to us. Maybe the stamp is 850 and the dividend is 50 cents, right? But still registered posted. Then we take this check of 50 cents and stay in a queue in a bank and finally deposit this 50 cents dividend, right? Now these are not easy. We have made things difficult. Today what has happened? Today we don't even get anything physical. Immediately our accounts, money transferred to our accounts. That's all. Okay. So the 50 cent now comes to our current account. And how do I come to know? Those days I go to the bank and ask them what is the current account balance. Now SMS alert. Things have become very easy for us. Okay. Think and write. Think and tell me the answer. Technological development, how it has influenced to capital market. Yeah, technological developments in the capital market. What are the advantages? Okay, what is that? Tell me something about. Okay, I'll read out. Technological developments in the capital market have led to automated trading platforms, online or computer-based trading, real-time settlement of transactions, sophisticated data gathering and dissemination systems, computerized risk management systems. Now, earlier people used to go to stockbrokers, we call them brokering huts, and there were monitors everywhere, and the investors just sit in front of this monitor and start trading. 2011, many flock around one computer placed in a stockbroker house, and they started trading. Okay, so from until 2:30, from 9:30 to 2:30, it's like beehive. Everyone is active, and a lot of retired people come and stay long hours and do day trading. Today, it's not. Okay. So broker houses, no one really goes there. Physically, we don't want to go to any of these broker houses. Okay. And stockbrokers by now work from home. They don't even go to these locations. What has happened? Let's say earlier we all went to Twin Towers, the best location. Now, no one wants to. The stockbrokers, they don't want to rent such sophisticated upmarket places. Workers, the employees are working from home, and stock traders work from their own homes, on their PCs. Okay, so technological development has automated trading platforms. Right? So I get a password, I don't want to talk to anyone, and I can trade myself. These developments have facilitated faster execution, clearing settlement with reduced friction in transaction, improved liquidity, efficiency of risk management, easy access to market, easy access to information, reducing asymmetric information, reduced transaction cost, access to advanced research techniques, enabling new products readily available to facilitate global trading. Okay. So trading has become so easy because of IT. We don't want to have lengthy of books to read. Just serve and you get enough information. Trading is easy with our own laptops, maybe with our mobile apps, we can trade. It has become very fast. Okay, then next question. What is the role of an underwriter? And I said, since we are talking about market intermediaries, this is about share underwriting. Yeah. Like to answer, I'm waiting for that. What is the role of an underwriter? So I said when PLC went for share IPO, NDB Capital became the underwriter, and they provide the service of assuring whatever remaining shares which are not subscribed by general public, they will buy. And they educate the company. They engage in filing process of the listing. They develop prospectus. They run roadshows and canvas investors. Okay. We have discussed that in the class as well. Now take your time and write something on the role of an underwriter. Yeah. Okay, so you have to write answers. Remember, you must get the practice of writing. If this is a physical class, I'm not waiting. I'll come to your seat and look at what you are writing. The reason is you need not to wait for the exam to write. Before that, you have to prepare. Okay. The answer is a person who, in connection with the public issue of securities of a listed public company, which has applied for listing, guarantees to purchase unsubscribed securities of such company for the fee or commission, or who negotiate with such company to purchase such securities in the event of offer being not fully subscribed, and includes any person who purchased such issue from the company specifically with the view to offering such securities to the public. Okay, so share underwriter agrees whatever the amount remaining I will purchase, right? Whatever the amount that the general public is not buying, I will buy, and my intention to sell it later and make a profit out of that. So that is share underwriting. I undertake to purchase whatever not purchased by general public. That is share underwriting. Okay. Now, before moving to the other question, we'll look into this one. At the very beginning, we talked about 2008 financial crisis. Okay. So this is from a past paper. Finance and leasing companies confronted a severe financial crisis during the recent past, and the crisis-hit companies are now at the tail end of the restructuring process. Okay. A major cause for the crisis was the failure of some unauthorized deposit takers. Right, in Sri Lanka, let's say Golden Key and its related companies started to collapse. So that is mentioned here. A major cause, so the question is, a major cause for the crisis was the failure of some unauthorized deposit takers. Who were those? Why did they fail? Now the question is, why these unauthorized institutions fail? Okay, so the very basic reason is they were not regulated. What are the reasons for existence of unauthorized deposit taking business? That one I leave you to write answer. What is the advice would you give to those who are seeking to deposit money with those who deposit in unauthorized institutions, right? What are the reasons for existence of unauthorized deposit-taking business? So the question is, why unauthorized deposit takers exist? Why unauthorized deposit takers exist? Tell me reasons. Why do you find unauthorized deposit-taking institutions? Central bank often put paper advertisement, full-page advertisements, and say these are the institutions only authorized to accept deposits from general public. But these unauthorized deposit takers exist. Why? Tell me reasons. Very good. Number one, high returns. Very good. Tell me another reason. Another reason of this existence. First one, I'll agree. Tell me another one. There are people who want very high return. When an unauthorized institute says, we are offering 24% per annum, very good. Second one, agreed. Money laundering, very good. So there are people who cannot disclose the way they earned money. So they prefer to deposit money in unauthorized institutions. After the collapsing of Golden Key, the names of the depositors appeared in Sunday Leader. Surprisingly, there were many religious leaders. Okay. Then, can you remember when I showed you the video clip, we talked about merging, right? So that is one solution available for the government and the regulator. When you see the signs of small institutions are going to collapse, stable. So you can, yeah, that's agreed. Maybe due to attractive marketing strategies. I'll agree that answer. There was a website called Randora.lk. And in this website, it's no more. Anyway, in this website, there was a nice article. It says, whenever cricketers appear on deposit-related advertisements, do not deposit in these institutions. And they showed examples. Right? When the celebrities appear on advertisements of deposit-taking institutions, don't go and deposit in these institutes. That was the message. Okay. So you have very attractive marketing strategies. Okay. Very good characters. Say Sangakka, Aidangani Singh. Think about the advertisements and what happened to these institutions. Maybe due to attractive marketing strategies. Accepted. Okay. So we were talking about merging. Even in the video clip which I showed you, when the regulator or the government sends collapsing of small institutions. Okay. This one, I'm not saying this is a rule. No, I said this was something appeared in a website. I'm not going to say that will often happen. Okay. Good companies have to develop marketing strategies. When you are developing marketing strategies, you select celebrities. No doubt about that. Okay. Suppose if Sampath Bank comes with advertisement with maybe Kumar Sangakka, are you going to say Sampath Bank will collapse? No, don't generalize that. Okay. But the truth is, people don't know what is Fitch rating, what is credit rating. They only look at the celebrity. When Kumar Sangakkara or Airangani Selasinga says this is the best institute to deposit, why do you buy that? That's your failure. Okay. Why don't you evaluate the institute? Okay. So that's my answer for your question. Okay. I'm not going to say that institutions which gets celebrities appear on the advertisements will always fail. No, that is not what I'm saying. I said that was the case. Anyway, be careful when someone appear in advertisement and say buy this product. He says not because he is really interested in that. He says that because he is paid to do that. Okay. Now, why do someone pay a huge amount for the celebrity? To increase the market demand. Okay. General public should look into other factors. Okay. If it's a food item, look at the nutritions. So if Kumar Sangakkara appear in an advertisement where the sugar content is very high, be careful. That's all what I'm saying. I'm not saying avoid all the advertisements where Kumar Sangakkara or Kumar Dharmasenan appear. No, that's not. But okay, we'll get to the main question. Outline salient features of current financial sector consolidation plan implemented jointly by the central bank and the government. So this question appeared in September 2014. That was the last days of previous Mahinda Rajapaksa regime. During that time, the governor was the same governor, and they had a plan to consolidate the banking sector and the finance sector. The competition is too much in banking and finance, too many players, and it's better to consolidate. That was their thinking. So the question was about merging, why it is important. Then the second one was, how will financial sector consolidation help the financial system and the economy in the future? Okay, right. So if this happened, if big companies and small companies merged, then there would be very few finance companies and very few banks left. Means what? Now they need not to go to the junctions and run roadshows to canvass deposits. Instead, you have very few banks. This is our interest rate, and these are our conditions. Right? So you need not to get involved in a neck-cutting business. Okay, right. Now we'll move into the other question. March 2017, number 6. Okay, a wide range of NBFI products is offered by financial institutions to its customers. Outline the operational aspects of each of the following financial product and their importance related to customer. Okay, gold loan, microfinance, factoring, repos. Okay, first write your answers. I'll give you 15 minutes. This one, you have to write the answer. I'll leave you 15 minutes. Write the answer, then we will discuss. Okay, gold loans. What is that? Okay, very good. Warning. Advances are issued by keeping gold articles as security, meaning maximum 1 year period to meet sudden liquidity requirements. Very good. So that answer is accepted. Microfinance. Okay. So right answer for the rest, whatever you know. Factoring, if you have not, we'll discuss. The rest we have discussed in the class. So continue with that. Okay. Microfinance as a bridge to finance. Okay, very good. Yeah. Pawning is covered by the pawning ordinance, but not the loans. Right. Okay. Right. Then the last one, repo. Right, two answers. Then we'll discuss. Repos. Okay. Repos. Right. First, I'll read out the answers. Number one, an advance given against gold with least amount of paperwork. A certain percentage of the value of the gold is given as collateral is granted as an advance for a period less than 1 year. So your answer was mentioning all these reasons. These are common among lower income groups, facilitate meeting of urgent cash needs. Yes, it's common among lower income groups, but anyway, there's no segmenting. Okay, anyone can get loan or the pawning facility for quick cash, for urgent cash need. Microfinance. Microfinance is considered a catalyst for growth in the informal economy, small businesses, self-employment, agriculture sector, SME sector. These are small-sized loans granted to lower income groups and SMEs. Collateral is most by way of personal guarantees. Payments are mostly on weekly basis. Financial inclusiveness, providing access to financial services to the underbanked, essential part of poverty reduction efforts, facilitates education, improve nutrition level. Okay, so microfinance is targeting the people or the communities marginalized by the formal banking sector. Those who cannot access to the formal banking and the financial sector will find it difficult to meet the requirements. What are the payback history, collaterals? So banks and finance companies are not interested in giving loans to these people. When you don't have the ability to take a loan, remember, you become poor. There's a very good book written by Thomas Sowell, Economics Beyond Stage 1. In this book, it says, there is a belief among certain set of people in developing countries that self-sufficiency is the path to develop. And they don't like to take loans. In Sri Lanka, whenever those experts stay in opposition, they always say, each Sri Lankan is in debt of this much. And when we come, we will settle all these loans. I have seen many traditional thinkers like Ravana, Balaka, and those people. They always find, okay, in this particular mountain, there is a treasure and you can settle all the loans. Fine, good. But does it mean that taking a loan makes you poor? No. What makes you poor is your inability to take a loan. Right? If you don't qualify to get a loan, then, my dear, you are in the poor bracket. If you qualify to get a loan, means what? You have sufficient wealth and you're okay. When you take a loan, and if you use it wisely, you can develop. Okay. In this book, it says, if the African and Asian countries where the area is not ruled by the colonial governments, they don't have land right. Think about Sri Lanka. Think about the provinces where their contribution to the GDP is lowest. For an example, Uva. Go to Monoragal and that area where people have been living in the same place for generations, cultivating chenas, but they don't have any deed, no land right. Who gave them land right? The Portuguese, and the Dutch continued giving you deeds. Now we are living in the rest of the country, which was governed by under the rule of these people, and we have a deed. Okay, so we have a long history, maybe 100, 200 years old history. My ancestors and they have, and now I own this property. Then the bank accepts it. The same people who are living in Monoragal and that area, when they go to bank, they don't have any collateral to take a loan. So Thomas Sowell suggests, instead of these countries going to big institutions and countries and economies and asking loans, give away deeds to these people. Then the people will go to their own banks and take loans, and that will develop them. Okay. Right. Microfinance is that, giving loans to those who are not having access to other formal sector. I'll read the answer. Microfinance, okay. Right. So I read the answer. It talks about educating. Means what? Most of the people falling into this category lacks financial literacy. So one aim, I think I showed you the, yes, I showed you the video clip of Professor Yunus. He talked about educating, the importance of educating, empowering the women. Okay. Right. Now I'll tell you one practical example how microfinance really work in Sri Lanka. I don't blame any of the microfinance institutions, but this is how it happened. One day, the tea maker, an outsourced lady, came up with a problem. Her daughter has fallen into a trap, a financial trap. What is the trap? Okay. The trap is her husband is working in a petrol shed and he's paid 1,000 rupees daily. And the maximum days he can work per month is 26 days. So his income is 26,000. And they have started a kottu kada, right? They have recruited a person agreeing to pay 2,000 rupees per day. Now that's their SME business. My monthly income is 26,000 and I employ a servant of mine whom I agree to pay 60,000. Okay, now that's their financial literacy level. How do they run this business? Now, in order to run this night restaurant, they need certain equipment. So they go and take a loan. Initially, they have gone to Bimput Lanka and taken about 50,000, yes, 50,000. How do they pay? On each Monday, you have to pay 5,000. Okay. Now you take a loan of 50,000. Each Monday, you have to pay 5,000. Right. Now, they don't have financial literacy. When you get 50,000, you think, okay, it's my money and I can use it as I wish. So they have purchased some relevant materials to cook this item, and the rest they have partied, bottles, everything. And they pay this employee as well. First Monday comes, out of this 50,000 and out of something they have earned by selling kottu, they pay 5,000. And after 1 month, now they don't have any more 5,000s coming in. So they go to another finance company, microfinance, Black Lanka, get another 50,000. Now they are once again happy, like Sri Lanka. To settle a loan, take a loan, right? Then now on Monday, you have to pay 5,000 to Bimput Lanka. On Tuesday, you have to pay another 5,000 to Black Lanka. Now what? They are looking after different microfinance companies. Now, every day of the week, they have to pay. Early in the morning, someone comes from this microfinance company, a cash collector, recovery officer, and he is not leaving the premises until 5,000 is given. So one is kept in the house and the others move out, somehow manage to get another microfinance loan, settle it. Finally, they have obtained another 200,000 loan from informal financial sector. Now the interest is very high, they can't pay. That's one problem with microfinance. You don't have CRIP reports. No one knows how much loans you have taken. And you are not educated. That's where education matters. Education in the sense how to manage your money. The money is not for having parties. These low-income earners often spend too much on parties, too much on liquor, too much on tobacco. And they are always in the low income level. Okay, next one, factoring. You have given the answer, agree with that. So factoring, I'll read it. A financing method in which a business owner sells accounts receivable at a discount to a third-party funding source to raise immediate cash needs. The factor agrees to pay the company the value of the invoice less a discount for the commission and fees. The factor advances most of the invoice amount to the company immediately and the balance upon the receipt of funds from the invoice party. Okay, think about one person who goes to Kurunegala, collect coconuts and come to Colombo and sell them. So he will take a load of coconuts and agree. Okay, let's say, okay, he comes and sell it to one Mudalali in Colombo. So Mudalali agrees to settle him after 3 months. Okay, so Mudalali will sell, 3 months credit is given. But after 2 months, he has to go back and collect another set of coconuts. He is not having money. So his accounts receivable from the Mudaladi, that invoice is given to a finance company. The finance company evaluate the invoice and give loan to the buyer. So that is factoring. Then the last one, repo. Yes, securities against collaterals. I'll read out. A form of short-term borrowings for dealers in government securities. So if a finance company or the bank, when they have government securities, basically, they will collateralize that and get a loan from another, with undertaking to repurchase the asset which I gave you. The dealer sells the government securities investors usually on an overnight basis and buys them back following day. Most of the time, they sell it on overnight basis. Next morning, they buy it back. So sell and repurchase. Agree to repurchase what I sold you. So that's repo. So that improves the liquidity in short durations. Okay. Next one. We almost discussed the same question earlier. Market intermediaries in the capital market. Now you know that market intermediaries are not financial intermediaries. Market intermediaries appear in capital market. Okay. Name 3 types of registered market intermediaries in Sri Lanka and describe each of their roles briefly. Okay, I'm not going to ask you their role. 1, 2, 3, 4. Tell me the names, the different categories of market intermediaries in capital market. Market intermediaries. Tell me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Who are they? By now you know that. The same question was asked earlier. Who are market intermediaries? Tell me some examples. 1, 2, 3, 4 quickly. Yeah. Agreed. Others? We discussed today itself. Okay. One more name. Unit trust, margin, stockbrokers. One more name. Okay. One more. Then we can finish it. One more category. Agree with all what you say. That's right. That was I'm waiting for credit rating agencies. Okay, that's fine. So that was there. Then on, how are money brokers different from stockbrokers? Yeah. Tell me an answer. How do money brokers different from stockbrokers? Something very simple. The name itself suggests that. What is that? Yeah, stockbrokers only deal with. Okay, tell me like that. Money brokers and stockbrokers. Money brokers, what do they do? And why they are different from stockbrokers? That is the question. The name itself suggests the answer. So write your answer and send me quickly. How are money brokers different from stockbrokers? Money brokers and okay, right, good. Trade cash instead of securities. Okay, simple as that. I'll read out. Money brokers act as mediator to bring suppliers of funds, and users of funds together, enabling them to enter into contract for money market transactions such as short-term loans, forex, repos, and reverse repos. They arrange these transactions particularly between corporate customers, such as banks, primary dealers, discount houses, and dealers in government securities. Money brokers do not themselves lend or borrow money. Money brokers, what they do is they connect those who with excess money with deficit money and get a commission. That is their business. So they don't lend themselves. They are not lenders. They are connectors of lenders and borrowers. They work for the commission for arranging contracts, often for short-term loans and overnight basis. Stockbroker. A stockbroker is an individual or a body corporate who buys and sells stocks and other securities for both retail and institutional clients through a stock exchange over the counter in return of fee or commission. Okay, so your answer is accepted, trade cash instead of securities. But for exam purpose, you must add more sentences. Underwriter, we have again and again discussed. Name the regulatory. Here you know that. SEC. Primary dealers. Okay. I'll give you 10 minutes. We have discussed about primary dealers in the class. I'll leave 10 minutes with you. Read it and send me the answers. Yes. Primary dealer. Describe the main business of a primary dealer. We have done a session on primary dealers. Who is a primary dealer? We used a nice term. Market maker for government securities. Okay, I'll give you a few more minutes. Okay. Right, so we'll see. Very good. Primary dealers are market makers of government securities. Very good. Right. Any person who, in connection with a public issue, market makers, 1 minute. Primary dealers are financial intermediaries who help in developing the primary and secondary market for government securities. The central bank of a country may employ these primary dealers to fulfill one of its objectives, which is to help the government complete its borrowing programs at the lowest cost. Okay, so primary dealers, your answer is accepted. The main objective of the primary dealers are to strengthen the infrastructure in the government securities market in order to make it vibrant, liquid, and broad-based, to develop underwriting and market-making capabilities for government securities, to improve secondary market trading system that would contribute to price discovery, enhance liquidity and turnover, and encourage voluntary holding of government securities, to make primary dealers an effective conduit for conducting open market operations. Okay, so we talked in detail about primary dealers. Now the second one. Yeah. Describe the main funding sources available for primary dealers. Send me the answers. Funding sources of primary dealers. Yeah. What are the funding sources? Okay. Equity capital, retained earnings, borrowings, repo borrowings, bank borrowings. Okay. We discussed that in the class, I can remember. Then next, name the regulatory authority of primary dealer and describe briefly its regulatory role. So the institute is regulator. Who is the regulator? Primary dealers. Who is the regulator? CBSL. Very good, CBSL. And the role, appointment of authorized primary dealers, issuing prudential directions and determinations, off-site and on-site examinations, the supervision of primary dealers, the main directions, issuing directions. Right. Then the last one. Briefly discuss the main causes of recent collapse. Now that's 2016. Collapse of Entrust Securities PLC. So that is a public listed company, a listed company. A primary dealer, right? So a primary dealer has collapsed. What are the causes? So any financial intermediary will fail due to these reasons. What are these reasons? Any financial intermediary will collapse due to these reasons. What are these reasons? We discussed in the class. Yeah. Fraud and mismanagement, misappropriation of funds, non-compliance to the rules, directions issued by the regulator. Yeah. Corruption. Correct. Fraud and mismanagement. Okay. Then this one. In the financial Okay, 2015, number 3. In the financial market, securities trade services facilitated by several financial institutions with specialized service product. Describe the nature of each of the following securities trade services product and their importance to the securities market. What is this and what is the importance? Investment advice, portfolio management, issue management, listing. Take about 10 minutes and send me the answers. Okay, investment advice. Any recommendation or guidance that attempts to educate, inform or guide an investor regarding a particular investment product or series of products. Investment advice can be professional. That is, investor pays a fee in exchange for the qualified professional guidance and expertise, as seen with financial planners. Or investment advice can be amateur in nature, as with certain internet blogs, chat rooms, or even conversations. Okay. Now, there are many platforms where investment-related things are discussed. We'll see some of them. Right. So in Sri Lanka, you have something called Sri Lanka Equity Forum. Let's see whether it's available. Sri Lanka Equity Forum. So now the name has changed, Financial Chronicle. Okay. Right, anyway. That's one website. Then you have another website, Forum Sentiment Equity. Okay, so you have a forum where you have a lot of industry analysis taking place. Right, if you want to invest in banks and finance, you can see what beverages, chemicals. Okay. Then there are some of suggestions like this week's most discounted 101 shares. Okay, then different arguments on that. Okay, now okay. So when someone comment, others talk about it, could you please clarify what net assets value per share, dividend? Okay, wonder why, for example, Overseas Realty, LB Finance, Valuable Finance did not make the cut. Also on the same note, just thinking about Blue and AFSL is on the list. If recall right from memory, Blue net assets value is 0.35, COCR, okay, DPL, right? So why is that? So just try to make sense of myself to match model works. So someone makes a suggestion and others keep on arguing, okay, is your ratios correct? Are you on the right track? Okay, so you talk about these shares are good, right? LB Finance, high return from pawning, right? So people are asking questions. So these are forums where you get free advice. right? Then we'll go for the home. If you go for industrial analysis, you will find, let's say, bank and finance. Under bank and finance, commercial bank, NTB, PLC, Sampath Bank, right? Commercial bank. If I'm going to buy shares of commercial bank, I look into what they discuss. Okay, how the revenue has been. That's about good one. So that was 2015, 6 years ago. How Sri Lanka was. Haley's was leading in this list. Commercial bank, the biggest private bank revenue-wise. Then you can look at Sampath Bank, Ceylon, NTB, NDB, then Central Finance, PLC, Pan Asia Bank. Their revenue-wise situation. Then think about LIOC, the oil maker, Carson's. Hale is the biggest one, right? So that gives us overall picture. Then on the commercial bank, then the NBFI sector, commercial bank in 2015, when they were making 77 million revenue, the biggest NBFI, now our sector, let's say PLC, making a revenue of 20 billion, where a bank, a commercial bank, Pan Asia, is making only a revenue of 10 billion. Okay. So I come to know about this information. So that was the first paper coming under that. Okay. So there is another very good one. Dividends. In certain companies, the dividend is growing up. In certain, the dividend is stable. Say NDB, it seems to be a very good dividend payer. Right. So likewise, I get information. Okay. So it's purely on commercial bank. By 2015, how the commercial bank loan and advances were distribution. Right. Loan categories. Pawning out of the entire portfolio, 0%. Personal loans, 5%. Okay. So likewise, you can see a lot of information appearing on these and lot of comments, different views, right? Comparisons. Means what? I am getting free advice. A superb one. Okay. Now, then there are other websites. Okay. So you can surf them. Right. We'll get back to our main subject. Right. So the main subject asked investment advice. You need investment advice. I have money. I want to buy commercial bank. Is it good? Or else shall I try HNB? Or I'll forget entire banking sector. I'll go to plantation sector. Is that my right decision? I have questions when I want to invest. So I need answers. These answers are investment advices. It can be taken by paying a fee, but today, like these websites, there are very good free advices. Okay. Let's say equity forums in Sri Lanka. Forums in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka Investment Forum. That's another one, 2021. Okay. So all of them give us free advice. At the same time, be very careful when you get something free. Maybe they are trying to play with you. Okay. Right. That was on advice side. Portfolio management. We talked about portfolio management. I have given you example like Norwegian Petroleum Fund and said what things can be included in portfolios. It can be equity, debt, cash, land, property, commodity. I have talked about so many different options that can be included in a portfolio. Okay, I'll read out the answer. Portfolio management, the art and science of making decisions about investment mix and policy, matching investment to objectives, asset allocation for individuals and institutions, and balancing risk against performance. It is all about strength, weakness, opportunities and threats in the choice of debt versus equity, domestic versus international growth, growth versus safety, and many other. Okay, so that's on portfolio management. Issue management. A person engaged in the business of issue management either by making arrangements regarding selling, buying, or subscribing to securities as manager, consultant, advisor, or rendering corporate advisory services. Okay, so issue management. Let's say you are going from IPO, initial public offering, then you are managing that issue. Listing means appearing on a stock exchange, name list. A listing refers to the company's share being on the list or board of stock that are officially traded on stock exchange. Normally, the issuing company is the one that applies for the listing, but in some countries, the exchange can list a company, for instance, because its stock is already being actively traded via informal channels. Okay, so that's on share trading part. Right. The last question we discussed at the very beginning, financial system. Okay, yeah, we have some other questions. Okay, we'll try. March 2018. So that was on pawning. So that was the only question so far raised purely on pawning. Try to answer. We'll take 5 minutes or 4 minutes ideally. Name the statute quickly. Note it down. What is the statute related to pawning? Number 13 of year. Then who are they? Right. Take a quick look and answer. So what is the act? That's ordinance. What is the ordinance? Yeah. Pawnbrokers Ordinance number 13 of 1942. The purpose is regulating the pawnbrokering business in Sri Lanka. Okay. Then second one, pledge. What is a pledge? Okay, so we have discussed this area with one session. Okay. Pledge, an article pawned by the pawnbroker. Pawner, a person delivering an article for the pawn. Pawnbroker, the person who carries the business of taking goods in pawn. Pawn ticket, the receipt. Okay, so who are authorized to do pawning business in Sri Lanka? An individual who are not allowed. An individual who is not a citizen, a foreign company, or a foreign firm. Then offenses. Taking an article from a pawn, article in pawn from any person who is appearing to be under the age of 16 years or to be intoxicated. Okay, so we discussed the entire ordinance and all these facts were mentioned. Okay, taking an article in pawn without giving the pawner the file, purchasing or taking in pawn or exchange the file of a pawn ticket issued by another pawnbroker, employing any servant apparently under the age of 21. So these are offenses. Okay. Now we have covered entire syllabus. Then we did questions appearing from different areas. However, we did not discuss short questions. Questions where you have to have a short answer and the MCQs. Next week, I'll do that. With that, I'll end the lecturing session next week. Now you have to go through all the materials very carefully, which I've given you. Take the topic, let's say pawning. Then look at the questions raised on pawning. We talked about portfolio management. Practically, we looked into many areas. Today, I showed you different websites, blogs, where they talk and give free advice on investments. I have talked and shown you the website of Norwegian Petroleum Fund. Now, practical side, I have shown you, and I have shown you the questions appearing on past papers. Your duty: read, often surf, read, get a very good understanding of what is happening around you. Then write answers yourself. One problem with this online, I'm very happy with rest of the online. Let's say if I want a YouTube, I can show you a piece of it. I showed you how the CEO of Nissan, his case. I showed you Professor Yunus Khan. Then on different issues like 2008 financial crisis, Ben Bernanke, his way of looking at things. It's very easy, this online mechanism. But one obstacle which I find is writing answers. When I give you the set of questions, you have to write the answers. And I know it's very difficult to type, so you send me very short answers. That's okay. But for exam purpose, you have to write a good answer, a comprehensive answer to get maximum marks. If this is a physical class, after giving these questions, I'll move around. Then I'll look at how the pens are moving here and there. What are you writing? Is your writing way correct? Then I can say certain changes. That part is missing here. Other than that, I'm very happy with online classes. I'm ending the session next week. I have covered entire syllabus. Okay, all the relevant materials I have given you, but keep on updating. Last week I talked about insurance and article published regarding insurance in Sunday Times. Get updated. Things are changing fast. With that, I'm asking you to seriously study now. And we have done many questions covering different topics: insurance, primary dealers, venture capital, pawning, all the topics we covered. What remains is question number 1, MCQs and short answers. That we'll do some exercise next week. With that, I will end the entire lecturing session on NBFI. Okay, thank you.